Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Grassroots NASCAR Racing and my name is Scott. And I've got some great news. Finally, after years of owning this car, this is the Harry Gant show car that I've had for a while. Never knew the history on it, was trying to figure it out. Had a little suspicion that maybe it was a Dale Sr. chassis because it had that poppy red paint underneath the gray. But it was always a mystery and it was driving me crazy, just driving me nuts. Well, I have great news. The mystery is solved. Thank God. With some help from some good people, thank God. Stapleton 42, thank you so much. He got in contact with Tex Powell, who we lost recently, unfortunately. Sad to hear that news, but Tex was able to look at some pictures that I had sent to Mitchell and looked at the photos, said, oh, I recognize that, yep. I think I know whose car that is. And Stapleton got back to me, let me know the news, and I was able to track down the driver, showed some pictures to him, and he said, yep, that's one of my old cars. So I can't tell you how excited I am, how happy I am that the news is finally known. I know what this car is, and it's so cool. And there's a very strange story. You know how the universe just kind of brings things together for some reason? There's one of those things with this car, and it's kind of cool. So we'll get into that. But let me tell you whose car this is. So he showed the pictures to Tex. Tex was like, yep, I recognize that, I recognize that. That is one of Eddie Birschweil's old cars. And when I heard that, I was like, who? Because I got into NASCAR in 1992 when I was 12. So I knew the big names, but I didn't know all the names. And Eddie was a small-time racer from like the mid-80s to 1992. Bounced around from a lot of teams, and then his family, they had a family-owned team for a while. And that is where this chassis came from. This was during that family time. It was one of their few chassis. And so he raced this chassis in the late 80s and early 90s. And that's really cool. So when I got in contact with him, turns out he lives in San Antonio, not too far from here. His family has a mortuary out there, and he still runs it and does some other stuff out there. So I got in contact with him. So while we were talking on the phone, you know, I showed him the pictures and everything, and he says, hey, that looks like my old super speedway car. And I was like, hey, that's kind of cool, because this thing has a build date of, I think it was 1 of 88, something like that. And that means that this would have been bodied as an Oldsmobile when he was driving it, number 23. And there's a story that popped into my mind that I had seen recently when I was doing a little research on him. And this is the thing that, you know, the way that the universe just kind of puts stuff where it should be. It's kind of interesting. I asked him, I said, wait, so this is your super speedway chassis? Yep, that's it. Well, is this the one that would have run in the 1989 Daytona 500? And he says, yep, that's the one. So in the 89 Daytona 500, Kyle Petty had just joined up with Sabco Racing. He had the Peak antifreeze sponsor. And during the Clash races, they wrecked their only car. Apparently they only had one car that year at Daytona, and he wrecked it. So he was out of the Daytona 500. Well, Eddie qualified. He got in his number 23 Oldsmobile, but Eddie didn't have any sponsors at the time. So Felix Savadas, he went to Eddie and said, hey, can we buy your car for the race so that we can put Peak on it and keep our sponsor happy? Eddie said, sure, we can do that. So what happened was, race started. At the first yellow, Eddie came in, got out of the car, and Kyle Petty jumped in. So Kyle Petty ran the race in an Oldsmobile number 23 with Peak on it and finished 10th in the Daytona 500. And what's crazy is that if you look up Eddie's statistics, his best NASCAR finish is 10th at the Daytona 500. Even though he's not the one who finished the race, they still gave him credit for that, and that's his best NASCAR finish. So pretty crazy, but it blew my mind that I'm a Kyle Petty fan, always have been. And I get this car that I haven't known the history on for so long, and it turns out that it's a chassis that Kyle Petty got in and drove at the '89 Daytona 500. How crazy is that? So you just never know. The history on these things is so crazy. But man, I'm so excited that the mystery is finally solved. The history of this car is finally known. But now the question is what to do with it. Honestly, it's a project that's been sitting here for a long time. I've often thought that if I make a street legal one, that this would probably be the one that I do it with. But I don't know. I'm honestly kind of getting to the point where I think I might be kind of liquidating some of the collection. I just have so much stuff, so many projects. I've got 6 cars in this garage right now. And so I think some of these things are gonna go soon. Some of the metal's probably gonna go soon. We'll see. The one back there, the Rusty Wallace car, that's gonna be for sale. That's gonna be for sale. And possibly that one's gonna be for sale. So we'll see what happens. I will update you probably in the next week what I'm gonna be doing with a lot of this stuff. So keep an eye out for that. But I appreciate all you guys who in the previous video from about, man, what was that, a year and a half ago or something, where I was asking for help on this car. All of you who commented, all of you who watched that, thank you for your help. Thank you again to Mitchell, to Tex. Without them, this mystery wouldn't have been solved. So I appreciate that. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.